trail over a couple of centuries. In other words, the British administrators in India had the burden to be answerable to a parliament situated thousands of miles away. The usual practice required the government of India to transport shipload of files to the India office in London. The passage to popular sovereignty had significant implications for the archives of the state. The post-colonial state derived its legitimacy from the people. The post-colonial rule retained the same bureaucracy, but it was not accountable to the British Parliament anymore. The channels that maintained meticulous contacts between the colonial and the metropolitan governments became redundant as a result. This eventually led to an overall decline of the official archival procedures. This eventually led to an overall decline. Okay. On the other hand, various social movements that developed in the post-colonial world in 1960s and 1970s began to use statistical databases and archives to stake claim on state sources. In the hands of the socially disadvantaged and marginalized groups, record turned out to be a language of social contestation. Ethnic groups, women, and minority groups in particular used numbers and cadastral surveys to make themselves visible, articulated their difference from the mainstream, and to make claims upon the state and its services, leading to the creation and elision of population categories. In my previous works on street hawkers, I, for instance, showed how by arrogating to itself a certain archival function, which is conventionally associated with the state, sections of the population can become successful in their endless negotiations and tussles with the government. In the context of post-colonial democracy, the archive turns out to be a contested field of political negotiation. It is not just a repository of useless, non-current autobiography of the nation state. Thus, in post-colonial decades, the field of archives became diverse and richer, and it expanded beyond the labyrinths of the state bureaucracy. In other words, the tactical expansion life during their lives, and this is where contemporary historical method differs from modern history. In this, feminist historians, I repeat, in this, feminist historians played a very significant role in the last couple of decades of the 20th century. The nationalist resolution of the women's question privatized women in the inner domain of sovereignty. When feminists began writing about women and gender, they were greeted by the silence about women in public archives, where men wrote their stories. Therefore, the feminist historians began to search talks about women in the areas